I went to the bishop and told him that I'd like to take it a step further and become a priest. After my training in Rome had finished, I returned back to the UK, was ordained a priest, and I worked as a Roman Catholic priest in a parish. And that was a very privileged time too. I was working with good people. The first Muslim I met in my life was not some important sheikh. My introduction to Islam was not through reading a book about Islam, or watching a TV program, or listening to a sermon by a Muslim preacher. My introduction to Islam came from a little kid in the street cleaning shoes. And I walked past him one day and he saw my white skin. This little boy, he was thin and he was wearing little plastic flip-flops on his feet. And he saw my white skin and he said to me, "Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon you." And he meant it. You know, he meant, this little kid, he meant peace be upon you. So my introduction to Islam came from a little kid greeting me with the words "Assalamu alaikum" and "All praise be to Allah." So when I went home from Egypt at the end of the week, I knew nothing about Islam, but I knew that Muslims weren't what the television told me. So I went back home. I was without a job. I needed to get a job. So my job was to teach the children in the school about the 6 major world religions: Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhism, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Now, I knew about Christianity and I knew enough about Judaism, but the other 4 I knew nothing about. So to teach Islam to these Muslim kids, and I was teaching them for public exams, I had to get the books out each night and read about Islam to teach them. And the more and more time went on, the more I read, the more I liked what I read. I liked what I was reading, until it came maybe 3-4 months into this journey. And I found myself, I was mentioning the name of Prophet Muhammad, upon him be peace, and tears would come in my eyes when I was teaching the kids, or a lump would come in my throat, which I quickly had to disguise, because these were rough kids, you know, you couldn't let anything away with them. Ramadan came, and they approached me and they said, "Sir, we've got nowhere to pray in Ramadan, and your classroom is the only room in the school with a carpet." Coincidence, eh? My room was the only room in the school with a carpet and a wash basin. They needed a wash basin to perform the ablution before prayer. So they said, "Can we use your classroom to pray?" So again, this part of the journey. The long and the short is that during Ramadan they prayed, and I sat at the back and marked my books and prepared my lessons. But basically, after a few days, began to watch them pray. So at the end of that Ramadan, I'd learned how to pray, and I'd fasted, not for Allah's sake, but I'd fasted to encourage the children's faith. So more and more months went by, and by this time I knew what Muslims were like. I knew they were good people. I felt comfortable with Muslims. So I began to go to London Central Mosque to learn more about Islam for myself. Not to teach, but for my own heart and my own mind. And the final one of the talks there was given by Yusuf Islam, Cat Stevens, the famous singer. And at the end of his talk, I went up to him and said, "Brother, what do you do to become Muslim?" And he said, "Well," I said, "I don't want to be Muslim, but if someone wanted to be Muslim, what would you do?" He said, "Well, first of all, Muslims believe in one God." I said, "Well, I've always believed in one God." He said, "And Muslims pray 5 times a day." I said, "Well, actually, I know how to pray in Arabic." And he gave me a very puzzled look. And he said, "And Muslims fast during Ramadan." I said, "Well, actually, I've fasted in Ramadan for the whole month." And he looked me directly in the eyes. And he said to me, "Brother, you are Muslim already. Who are you trying to fool?" And with those words, "Brother, you are Muslim already, who are you trying to fool?" the call to prayer sounded in the mosque. It was just the most beautiful thing when the Quran began to be recited, and I began to cry, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried like a baby. When the prayer was finished, I went to Yusuf Islam, and I said, "Brother, I want to become Muslim. Tell me what to do." He said, "Say these words after me. Say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah."